For more, let's cross to London. Natia Seskuria is Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute think tank. Thank you for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a summer where on several occasions we have had these announcements of a breach of defense lines or the recapture of a village that was significant, but we haven't seen the front lines budge much. Is it significant this time?
Yes, I think this is a significant gain, especially in light of the ongoing speculations whether or not Ukrainian counteroffensive has failed. I think we all agree that the advancements have been slow, but at the same time, the progress has been steady. And it is worth to take into consideration that Ukrainian forces are facing some of the most strongest Russian fortifications, defenses, and I think in the recent days the advancement of the Ukrainian forces have been clear. They have managed to recapture two important villages on the southern flank of Bakhmut, and Bakhmut has a huge strategic and symbolic importance at the same time. And I think recapturing, especially the recent news about recapturing of the village of Kyiv, may as well set the stage for Ukraine to take control of Bakhmut, which has seen the longest and one of the most brutal battles, and which has been captured since May by the Russian forces with the help of the Wagner group.
But we're told that Bakhmut and the areas around it heavily mined. Is it just going to be? Could it be just another repeat of all those casualties that we saw back in this winter and spring?
Well, it is a very tough task that the Ukrainian forces have, and you have quoted the U.S. General Milley as well as the NATO Secretary General. I think they're totally right when they mention that this is a long battle. And I think initially the expectations from the Ukrainian forces were falsely made in terms of how quickly they could achieve success. They have shown and demonstrated a huge resilience, but at the same time, it is worth mentioning that these are heavily mined ground that they are fighting on, and also Russians had quite a lot of time to prepare for the Ukrainian counteroffensive, which was announced well before the beginning of the actual counteroffensive 4 months ago. So indeed, I think the next couple of months will be quite tough for the Ukraine, and at the same time, despite the fact that Ukrainian officials have made it clear that the fighting will be ongoing even during the tougher weather conditions, I think it is clear that Ukrainians will be trying and attempting to advance as much as possible before the winter.
What's the strategy behind, or what's your philosophy when it comes to the fact that Ukraine is trying to press on two fronts, towards the east around Bakhmut, and towards the south in the direction of Melitopol? Is that the right strategy at this point in time, seeing as there are heavy casualties?
Well, I don't want to make any assumptions on the strategy of Ukrainian armed forces, but I think Ukraine made it clear that what are their goals, and we see some advancements on both ends, and Ukrainian counteroffensive is now ongoing for 4 months. And I think the main, of course, the taking of Bakhmut would be a huge psychological boost on the Ukraine side, of course, and it will have also a significant psychological effect on Russian forces, on Russia generally, because we remember how Putin celebrated and how much of a big deal Russia made out of capturing Bakhmut. But I think the southern eastern part towards the city of Zaporozhye remains the key battleground, which is is strategically most important for Ukraine, as Kyiv is aiming to reach the coast of Sea of Azov in order to cut off Russian supply lines through the land bridge connecting Rostov to Crimea. And we have seen some progress, although slow progress on this side. And I think this will remain one of the key goals. And hopefully we will see some progress made during the next couple of months. But I don't have expectations that this progress will be fast and we will see some breakthrough soon enough.
Natia Seskuria, what's the significance on the day that the announcements made of the recapture of these two villages near Bakhmut, of the firing of 6 deputies at the Ukrainian Defense Ministry?
Yes, well, there are a lot of speculations about the reasons behind this decision. We have seen that there is some continuity when it comes to making such decisions in the recent months. And there are some allegations, some speculations about the corruption, although the official administration does not really confirm that they have these decisions has anything to do with the corruption allegations. So I guess it would be a speculation from my side to claim that it is ultimately related to these sort of corruption cases, but there is obviously the idea, the general idea that there might be some background story that we don't know of that has prompted Zelensky to make such decisions.
And one final question for you. Volodymyr Zelensky headed to the United States during UN week. He's going to be in Washington later. Are there people who are still wavering, who he can convince? What is his mission on this trip compared to the previous one?
Well, I think Zelensky's job is quite tough because he needs to continuously convince all the allies that it's not time to sit down at the negotiation table and deal with Russians that way. And there is always, although we see an unprecedented unity when it comes to NATO allies, of course, there is always these attempts to somehow start the discussion about whether or not it is time for a negotiated settlement. And I think Zelensky has been very clear about where Ukraine stands, and they're very much against they don't really see negotiations as a solution to this brutal war that has been ongoing for more than a year. So I think despite the fact that Ukraine has demonstrated some progress, there will be still some speculations about whether or not the Ukrainian counteroffensive can achieve its aims. And I think demonstrating progress throughout these couple of months will help Zelensky. In this case, the current cases of recapturing these two villages will help Zelensky to make a strong case that Ukraine needs further support. And I think his main job will be to convince partners, and especially United States, as we know that he has a meeting with President Joe Biden, to convince them to provide Ukraine with more air support, particularly F-16 fighter jets, of course, as well as some of the long-range missiles that will enable Ukraine to strike deep into the Russian-controlled, temporarily Russian-controlled territories.
Natia Seskuria, many thanks for joining us from London.